Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my review of qualifying for the 2024 Miami Grand Prix. So after the sprint earlier this morning, a bit more of a relaxed session, a bit more normal of a session. Drivers got going, and after the first runs of Q1, the bottom five drivers were Ocon, Magnussen, Albon, Gasly, and Zhou. Really high track evolution though throughout that first phase of qualifying, with both Bottas and Hulkenberg going P5 and P6 on their second runs, I believe. And Alpine impeded Verstappen, and then according to Sargent's radio, Tsunoda ruins him. Tsunoda might get investigated for impeding for that after the session as well. But your five drivers knocked out at the end of Q1 were Bottas, Sargent, Ricciardo, Magnussen, and Zhou. So both Alpines managing to get into Q2, so a good result for them. And for Bottas, after qualifying, I believe six, basically being six after a second run, falls all the way to 16. So really strong track evolution there. Into Q2 we go, and Piastri was actually 2 tenths ahead of Max Verstappen after that first run. Usually I wouldn't really discuss the top times in Q2 because they don't really matter, but it was a bit unusual, so I thought perhaps maybe we might have a bit of a tight fight for pole later. And then Leclerc goes top there as well, and Verstappen actually had a pretty poor first run in Q2. Albon then causes a yellow flag in Sector 3, basically just overshot turn 17, carried a little bit too much speed, wasn't able to get the car turned in, and basically had to stop, back the car up, and then continue. So yellow flags there. He came on the radio saying that the tires were basically dead, and he wasn't able to control them over a full lap. Let's see. Five drivers in the bottom five after the first runs were Ocon, Hamilton, Stroll, Alonso, and Albon. So a bit of a surprise to see both Aston Martins in that drop zone, especially since they both got into Q3 in the sprint qualifying yesterday. So perhaps changes that they've made to the setup weren't as good as they thought, and perhaps other cars just improved more. Stroll, so getting the final runs in Q2. And Stroll, Gasly, Ocon, Albon, Alonso all out. So Alonso, really rough qualifying session relative to his pretty lofty standards. Qualifying 15th behind Stroll and behind both Alpines, which I think he was not expecting when he woke up this morning. So into Q3 we go. Verstappen sets the initial benchmark of 127.241 with Leclerc 0.141 back. Definitely kind of within touching distance, but Verstappen definitely had breathing room on that lap. Sainz third, Piastri fourth, and Perez rounding out the top five. Sainz was noted for impeding Hulkenberg, but shortly afterwards they decided that there would be no further action for that move. Norris then qualified 6th on a medium tire, so both Norris and both Mercedes would later go for mediums on their final run. So not sure if they decided that the mediums were somehow better tires in qualifying like we saw yesterday, where the fastest time in sprint qualifying was actually Norris's SQ2 time on the medium tire. So I guess basically some drivers deciding to go for a Hail Mary. Didn't really work out in the end, but nonetheless, it was an interesting choice. Then we get to the final runs in Q3. Verstappen not able to improve. The Ferraris weren't either. So it was basically a pretty anticlimactic ending. No one really able to improve the lap. Either the track, I guess, started heating up too much, or perhaps cooled down too much too. Hard to say. There you go. Verstappen 7th pole in a row, 6th consecutive pole to start the season. I know Norris got the pole in the sprint in China, but that doesn't really count when you're looking at official pole streaks and official pole statistics. And he'll be lining up with Leclerc on the front row, so the same front row that we had for the sprint, and then Sainz rounding out the top three. Perez 4th, Norris 5th, Piastri 6th, 7th, Russell 8th, Hamilton 9th, Hulkenberg 10th, Tsunoda 11th, Stroll 12th, Gasly 13th, Ocon 14th, Albon 15th, Alonso 16th, Bottas 17th, Sargent 18th, Ricciardo 19th, Magnussen 20th, Zhou. So really big changes compared to the qualifying from sprint. Ricciardo obviously 18th compared to 4th in the sprint qualifying, so that's a massive downgrade for him. The Aston Martins as well were quite a bit slower. Both they qualified 7th and 8th, which is where the Mercedes are. So basically quite literally swapped places with Mercedes there. And then other than that, the front was really the same. Red Bull and Verstappen really the benchmark, and then Ferrari a little bit behind them. McLaren a little bit off, I think, third place team. Perhaps, I guess, higher expectations after their really strong performance in the Grand Prix in China. But yeah, nonetheless, I think that's about where they would be. Now, taking a look ahead to the Grand Prix, I think basically looking at this grid, I think pretty reasonable to assume that Verstappen will win the Grand Prix bearing any difficulties. That being said, I think it will be an interesting fight for a second between Leclerc, Sainz, and Perez. And perhaps if the race pace is better, maybe the McLarens will be in that mix too. Taking a look at kind of the outside of the points, I think Alonso and Stroll may be drivers knocking on the points. I would assume that their race pace is better, given that we haven't really seen what their race pace is because of the first lap incident from the sprint. But nonetheless, I do think that Hülkenberg and Tsunoda will be well positioned to get points again tomorrow in the Grand Prix. So there you go. There's my review of qualifying for the 2024 Miami Grand Prix. Thanks you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. The support is always very much appreciated. Goodbye.